Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, an interview-style podcast providing insights on how to lead people. Proudly brought to you by Human Interactions Australia. Welcome to Leadership Unlocked. Today we've got Niven joining us. He's an author. He's written a book called The Leader, the Mortar that defines the leader, and he's writing a few more books, I believe, as well. So welcome along, Greg. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you for having me.
That's okay, no problems at all. So we do this all the time. You get a chance to pitch. So I guess you're going to pitch the books, right?
Definitely am. I'll try my best.
Go for it. Tell us a little bit about you as an author.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I guess maybe just go into how I got to this point is I sort of, in uni, started doing a bit on leadership, and I started reading some of those scholarly articles, and I thought, well, I reckon I can have a crack at this. So I started doing one and actually did about a page or two, and I thought, let's have a little bit more of a go. And I sort of wanted to quote myself in my own text. I thought that would be quite cool. Why not? It ended up being about 12 to 14 pages, and I thought this could become more. I ended up getting to about 50 pages, and I said to myself, what more could I do with this? And I guess it just continued to evolve from there. And then I started looking on the internet and talking to people about what it is to write a book, how many words needs to be in a book. So it was quite a bit of an evolution there. But from my perspective, it's becoming a series now. I guess this is my first book, and then I'm looking to write about 4 books on leadership and different styles of leadership. And I guess each book sort of develops as I start to learn and take on more in my life. But yeah, I guess work full time Monday to Friday, but also on the weekend I spend a bit of time writing some books.
Sure.
A bit about me.
So tell me, what were you studying at uni?
Yeah, I did I should know this, a degree in business management.
Okay, right. And so it's there where you got this kind of, I guess, use of a word, passion for leadership?
Yeah, I think it was just before that, actually. I did a leadership and management program or a diploma, and I actually didn't know the difference between leadership and management. I was like, it's the same thing, right? And I think there's that misnomer that a lot of people think, well, it's the same thing. And I guess I did that and learned a lot more about that, and then went into my degree and then started to really put those pieces together and really understand the delineation between the two.
Yeah, right. And so then you just, let's write a book, because that's easy.
Somewhat.
Start with 2 pages, and what is the deal these days? How many words do you have to write a book?
This one was 100,000 words, and then it dropped down a little bit, and then went up and down, but it sat around 100,000 words, but it's 264 pages.
264 pages?
Yep.
And I guess probably the next question is, what's the next in line? Are you prepared to tell us what the next 3 books are?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to talk about that. I guess, look, if I just summarize this book really simply, this book is called The Leader. It's about leadership and what I see in leadership, and it took a lot of experience from a lot of books that I've read. Probably read 200-300 books in my short lifetime, and took a lot of that and tried to wrap it up into, I guess, a more common sense approach. There's a lot of books on leadership, so I'm not going to say I'm not the only one who's done that, but I think it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
My second book is actually on risk taking, but not just saying take risks, but also looking at what it is to take a risk, and then what's the benefit of that. And the book is actually called The Knife's Edge, because there is a certain level of success and failure, and you sort of sit on a knife's edge sometimes when you take a big risk, big reward, sometimes low risk, small reward. So there's that. And then the third book is actually called The Way Through. Originally The Way Out, but it sounded a bit melodramatic, so I went to The Way Through, which is really overcoming life's challenges and how you take a spin. I guess, look at the difference between, I always like to say, I have a win or I learn. You can say I win or lose, but if you take something out of when you've made a mistake or you failed, then you take that as an opportunity to learn and take it to the next step. So I sort of take that positive approach and put it into this book called The Way Through. And then my final book in this series is called Rise, which is sort of encompassing all 3 of those books together and putting it into a summary, so it's a little bit easier to digest in one go instead of the 3.
Sure. So in your perspective, what is the difference between leadership and management? Because it's an age-old question. People come up with all sorts of different definitions, I guess. But where are you at with that one?
And you're right. I could say something and someone go, no, that's not how it is. But that's why it is a subjective sort of point. I look at it actually in 3 ways. So I sort of, through all the reading I've done, I've looked at management, leadership, and there's also another thing called command. So if you take a very simple approach, I see management as the laws, the guideline, the framework that you operate within. Leadership is the influence and really the desire and passion to get there. And command is actually the legal authority of position. So I guess it's quite a military version, but command is really the legal position to be in a place. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader. It just means that you have a position or title, and the same in the commercial industry. So you might be, say, a vice president,
sure,
but are you really a leader? So I sort of try to break it into 3 zones, which is management, leadership, and command.
Interesting, because I know that you've just got into the reserves, the Army Reserves, is that right?
Yeah, appointed on the 23rd of August 2021, and I'm away next year. So for me, this is something I've wanted to do all my life.
Yeah.
Sort of different opportunities came up that would stop me going full time, and now this is sort of the compromise with my wife, and that's a big part of leadership, I guess, is compromise and finding the right balance.
Sure. So that's the Army Reserve, that's right, isn't it?
Definitely.
And so you start your training, I think March.
25th of March. Can't wait.
Right. Interesting.
Can't wait.
And is that out of VB, out of Victoria Barracks? Is that where you do that?
Out of Kapuka.
Oh, out of Kapuka.
Yeah.
And how long are you away for?
5 weeks.
Wow.
Yes. So I think full time is 3 months. So again, that's the compromise with my wife and daughter, that 5 weeks is just enough to be away from home.
yeah, exactly. That's going to be that's a bit of an eye opener too, I'd imagine. So.
Well, I think a part of the Army Reserves is, for me, and this might be a part of leadership or just life in general, I sort of looked to the end of my life and said, if I were to look back, what would I regret? Because, I guess, this might sound melodramatic again, but if you're looking on your deathbed, you don't want to look back and look at all the things that you missed out on as opportunities. So for me, this is something I sort of negotiated with my wife to say, I've always wanted to do it, and something I don't want to look back and say, what if, or why didn't I try?
Yeah.
So I was trying to look back and say, okay, what is something in my life that may actually become a regret? And if I link that to my values, I have 4 key values in my life, which I say is strength, determination, service, and awareness. And if I maybe break that down, strength is sort of passion and not just about physical strength, but the passion in my life. Determination is really getting through things, and life is not always peachy, but it's a roller coaster. There's the good and the bad. So the determination is the ability to push through the bad times. Service is really to my family and to my country. I think I have a debt to owe for how lucky I am in my life and where I am. And living in the Shire, I might say, is a pretty good bonus to be as well. A lot of people out there be like, oh, these Shire guys.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then awareness for me is being aware of myself. I know I talk too much sometimes, or I might do this, or I might do that. So awareness is really about sort of keeping yourself in check, but also, knowing who you are in the world and being happy with who you are as well.
So when you wrote this book, The Leader, you said before you're in a 9-to-5 job. Yep. How is this reflected in your role at work?
Yeah, really good actually. When I first released the book, professionally, it's sort of opened a lot of dialogue with a lot of people in my business. Globally, actually, there's a lot of discussion, and it's a bit of a talking piece, which I always thought would come becoming an author and sort of talking to people in the business. They'd pique their curiosity. And quite interesting, when I first rolled it out, a lot of people actually reached out to me and said, hey, can we actually plug you in this, or can we say that you actually wrote a book on leadership so that we can tell other people? And within the business, quite a few people have reached out to me just to go, hey, you wrote a book on leadership, so you must know something about it.
Sure.
Can I have a chat with you about what you think I should do for my next role, or this or that? So I had a lot of trainees or graduates within our business actually reach out to me and ask me, what do I think of them and where do I think they could go with their skill set? So for me, it's given me the opportunity to do some more development with people. I love that. I love helping people and make them better. I think it's a two-way street. If you think that when you give to someone that they get everything, it doesn't work that way. You learn as you do. And I think even sometimes the old saying, fake it to make it, is sometimes you've just got to take some confidence, try something, and you'll find your way in the end if you've got enough determination to get to that end point. So I think this book was really a great opportunity professionally to sort of give me some, some tickets on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But it also meant that people were going to come to me and challenge
that's right.
my expertise. So it was a really good opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm curious about the Army Reserve, because especially in the context of what you've just said about command, leadership, and management, is there a part of the Army Reserve that you're attracted to specifically? Like, is it leadership or is it this idea of command? I've been fortunate, as you know, I was introduced to you by a friend of mine who's in the Army and has been for some time, and I've been lucky enough to be at VB for a few wine tasting events, and I've met some of the old majors, and and it's an intriguing culture that sits in there. But there is this element of command still. Even though they've retired, don't say the wrong thing while you're sitting at the table with them.
Definitely.
Is really important, right? So is there an attraction to the command aspect, and that's why that comes out in your vernacular, or is it still leadership? And I know that's challenging, but...
No, it's a really good point. Actually, I've always... When I was younger, I always wanted to become a captain in the Army, and a captain's sort of middle of the range. I don't want to offend anyone, but that's really the middle of the range. And for me, I've never really thought about going beyond that. I always thought that I wanted to be somewhat close enough to the team and close enough to the tools, physically on the ground, but not too high up. I like being on the floor and engaged and part of something.
Sure.
So I guess there is a certain level of the command that I like the idea of, being there and coordinating a large scale program or team, but also being close enough to the team on the ground that I can actually physically still be involved and not just in influence. Because I think at a command level, or should I say, take a step back, at a leadership level, it's very much influence based. Whereas at a command level, it's very much, you have a legal designation and you tell someone what to do and they do it.
Yeah.
Generally, I'd say. Maybe not in the commercial world as much, but definitely in the Army.
Certainly in the Army they do. Absolutely. You're sitting there, Craig. Okay, I'm sitting there. Thank you.
Correct. But I think you bang on, even retired guys that I talk to, when I find out they are in the Army, I have a very high respect for these guys. And generally I call them sir. And sometimes these guys say to me, my name's such and such, don't call me that. But
sure.
I always try to extend that level of respect. And I think that comes from a command, but also you can sort of tell from someone quite quickly who they are. First impressions generally have a pretty good, I guess, fix on people. Sometimes they change and you don't get someone right.
Sure.
But I think when you talk to someone, you can sort of understand, do they have leadership qualities? So if you talk to someone who's in a position of command, you'll understand pretty quickly if they're just a commander and a manager, or if they're a commander and they've got the leadership, and you can see how people interact around them, which is to your point about some of these guys that are retired. Some people probably still call them boss, which is a term I've heard a lot of people say. If you call someone boss, it's because you highly respect them, as compared to sir. Sometimes,
interesting.
Different demographics.
Interesting. I know I was lucky enough to meet Mark Beretta from Channel 7. Channel 7? Yeah, Channel 7. Because he's just joined the reserves about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. So he, similar to you, similar story, had been wanting to do it all his life and finally got a chance to do it. And he's in the reserves now as well. He's loving it. He's really enjoying it. So
can't wait.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll come across Mark at some point. A lovely guy. So talk to me about the book more and some of the key things for you. When you think about this book, the 264 pages, what are some of the key things that you think leaders should be aware of if they want to be leaders and not just managers?
Definitely. I think one of the biggest ones is to be the greatest representation of yourself, even when no one is watching. So maybe I'll say that again, is to be the best version of yourself, even when no one is watching. So,
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. The only reason
I
could easily mock that because it's used over and over again. It's overstated, that statement, right? And so what does that mean really? What does it really mean to be the best version of yourself? Because we screw up at times in front of people and behind closed doors. So what does that really mean, do you think?
I think it's also on the point where you say people screw up is actually taking ownership. And a big part of leadership is ownership. If someone's in a position of management or something like that, they might, it was this, or I run out of time and so therefore this, or, there's all these excuses. But if you just take ownership, people actually go, thanks, I understand that you've realized what you've done wrong, move on.
Yeah.
But when you start creating all these excuses and things, that's when you start to go down that rabbit hole. Yeah. And I think a part of that is, the way I actually see it in my head is if no one's around and the lights go green, then you go across.
Yeah.
But if the lights are red and no one's around, would you just drive through those red lights? And definitely it's overused, and I think, yeah, you're looking like maybe I would, maybe not.
On a push bike. It's Sunday morning at 6 o'clock and there's nothing around.
No speed cameras,
I go.
nothing like that.
In the car, no. On a push bike, I do.
That's a different story, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it's a key item, because even when you think no one is watching, there might be someone watching. And I think that's the key moment. You might look around and think, well, the way in which I'm talking to this team member, it's just a one-on-one and no one else is going to realise.
Yeah.
But when that person talks to other people and then that other individual talks to someone else, they start to form a picture of, hey, maybe this person's different one-on-one as compared to they are in a nice public forum. So that's sort of what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And this is not about me, this podcast, but one of the things that actually came to mind before interviewing today was I remember when I was in a leadership role or a senior role, I was heading up the similar industry, actually. I was working for UPS.
Oh, there you
and,
go. Cool.
And I was the call center manager there. And it was really intriguing. We'd go out socially on Thursday night drinks over the Sheridan and at Ascot there. And there was one or two people that said to me, Craig, why are you so nice when we're out socially, but you're a pain in the backside, essentially. And I couldn't get that medium. I couldn't get that.
Yeah.
I guess the true person. I had this one hat in the office and one hat out, and they were misaligned.
Yeah.
And so it's an intriguing space to be in. Is right. Is how do you, and again a word that's overused. How do you become authentic to you and your values as a leader, as a manager, as a commander? I guess right.
Sorry.
Yeah, go.
I was going to say that is actually a really cool point, and it's actually something I think of in and it's in my book, actually, not product place, but when I first started as a manager, I was appointed as a manager in a I would say medium-sized business. I was quite young. I think I was 19 years old, and I took on a team of about 20, 30 people, dangerous goods operation. And all the guys were in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and I was their boss overnight. We had a lot of turnover, and my MD said, "You're it, make it happen." And he flew back to Queensland. I was like, okay, let's have a go.
Yeah,
why not?
yeah.
And I remember before that, we were all colleagues. We go out for drinks, do all that social thing. And then the next day I changed my mindset and became their boss. And it was really challenging. There was a lot of friction because I said, well, as a manager, this is how I must now act because I've seen it in the past. So this is how I believe I have to be. And that, as you said, that balance, very, very hard. It was a very challenging 5 years for me.
Especially with older people, just, I don't mean older people, but that age difference, who feel like they've got a lot more experience and, maybe even they may be more wise about decisions, but I think they've also got a bit slacker as well in some of the stuff they do as well. So, that's a tough one.
I think what I learned, you don't just do it overnight. It took me quite a bit of time, but I learned you got to take people along for the journey, and you've got to actually leverage their experience and their personality, because when you bring them part of the journey and you actually ask them, hey, would this work? They own the process. So they become a part owner of a process. So in my now job and what I will do for the rest of my life is when I want to roll something out and I've got to hand it over to someone, I make sure they're part of that journey so they own it. So when it gets to a point where someone challenges the concept or whatever it might be, they actually step in and defend it and say, no, we've gone through this. This is how it's going to work. And you can sort of step back and go, wow, this is really good. But to get to that point, you've got to bring them along for the journey. You've got to leverage their experience and actually ask them that question. It goes back to your authenticity. As a manager or leader, you don't know all the answers. You got to sort of work your way through it. But that's why you got to refer to these people who have that expertise. I
remember years ago delivering train the trainer programs, and there was a piece of material that was you wear the hat of a trainer, you wear the hat of a facilitator, and you wear the hat of I think it was a director almost. And I'm sensing that right now, that as a leader, in inverted commas, pardon me, you do have to be a commander at times. And at times you have to be a leader, and other times you do have to manage shit. I'm not sure that it is just single roles per se. I think they actually blend, or you move up and down in each of these areas. What's your thoughts on that?
And definitely, and it comes back to that dichotomy, as you mentioned before, about the personal compared to the the professional. I know I've had environments where I've had a team and they've seen me out in the social side and they go, who are you?
Yeah.
And I think it's that flexible leadership and management and command is you might be in a position of authority by the company or by a legal authority, but then sometimes you've got to draw the line and follow those guidelines of management. But then other times when maybe the troops or the people in the team are really, snowed under or there's a lot of pressure, you've got to sort of pull that passion out again and rise above the challenges it may be and put on that positive attitude and sort of bring them through. Even, sometimes you need to sort of draw from all those sources. It isn't one set area.
Yeah.
But you do see, and even in my industry, you see some people that sit in those channels and they're robots and they don't get what they need, but people who sort of have the ability to jump across the 3 channels have a lot more opportunity to be flexible.
There is that saying, and I think we've said it in a podcast before, but that most people don't leave a business, they leave a manager or they leave a leader. That's the main reason why they leave. Wow, it is. I'm not sure if you can hear this on the recording, but it is absolutely throwing down rain outside right now. It's crazy times. Tell us more about some of the key things in your book for you. What are some of the things that you really like about this book as far as content? That would be helpful for leaders that are listening. Yeah,
definitely. Look, it takes a lot of just standard life experiences. You can read some books from the commandos and some guys that have been through some huge things in their lives. For me, I wouldn't say the most drastic events happen in my life, so I can't say I was under fire and jumping out of helicopters and things like that, maybe later on in life.
Sure.
But right now, I think I just take a common sense approach to things that probably quite transferable to other people. Promotions and taking on a manager's position. Some things outside of work in your social life, but nothing really hugely drastic. So I've been very fortunate, touch wood, that life's been pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And I think my book just takes a very common sense approach to a pretty, I don't want to say an average life, that makes me feel quite mundane, but quite an average sort of balanced life I've had.
Yeah.
I had to make decisions that have sort of changed my trajectory in my life substantially. But I think throughout my book, I sort of explore how I came to those decisions. So, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years later, I sort of look back and I went through a memory or a moment in my life and I said, why did I make that decision? So when I used to live down Shell Harbour, I had it good. And then I moved 100 kilometres away to Sydney and, changed my life, uprooted everything. And I just sort of go through the thought process of why I got to that point and what I got out of it, and would I look back and change things? No. And I guess that's what I go through in the book. So just a very common sense approach, and I think it's quite relatable to other people.
And what have you noticed yourself around leadership through probably one of the toughest eras that I've ever experienced is COVID. I know some leaders really stepped up and became incredibly empathetic of their staff. What have you noticed in that space?
I think, so I've got a saying here that I want to sort of say,
Sure.
and this is probably representative of this, but I like this saying by Dag Hammarskjöld, which is, if you want your garden to flourish, don't reserve a plot for weeds. I think that comes down to positivity. Like I mentioned before, life has its ups and downs, and COVID's been a great example of a lot of downs, but also on the back of that, there's a lot of goods too. Being selfish myself, I got to see my daughter grow up, so I got to see other things. And I think it's that positive side. It's hard if you're losing your job and things like that.
Yeah.
But we live in a pretty good country, and I don't want to go into the political side, but we live in a pretty good country that it's not been super, super bad as compared to maybe overseas. And I think perspective is important. And I think for leadership, it's about not reserving a plot for weeds in your life. Try and focus on the positives in your life, because if you start to focus on those negatives, that plot of weeds starts to grow out. In the world, there's so much to look at that's bad. There's so many bad things that happen everywhere, even in Australia. But I guess it's the old serenity prayer, really focus on the things that you can control. And try and, understand the bad things are out there, but try your best to control what you can within your own life. That's probably my biggest point is positivity. And, I sort of got heavy into Tony Robbins and quite a few of the motivational speakers or energizers.
Yeah.
And I found that, that was their core message, is to really focus on the good in your life understand the bad, hope for the best, prepare for the worst sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is positivity. Getting through COVID required a lot of positivity.
It's funny that you mentioned Tony, because Tony has a similar saying to that, which is, it's no point being positive if you're looking at your garden and there's all weeds in it, and you just close your eyes and he says, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, no weeds. You open your eyes, but there's still bloody weeds. It's like, get rid of the weeds, like, as his analogy on it. So it's not just about being positive per se. It's like you still have to action stuff. You still have to do stuff to get rid of those weeds, or not reserve a section for weeds, right? So if you were mentoring somebody that was coming through, a young leader, 27, 28, we've probably learned from our own mistakes, authenticity being one for me, or being aligned. Well, what would be some 2 or 3 tips that you would give a new leader coming through the ranks? Ranks, sorry.
Yeah,
no pun on the army.
I get the point. I think a big one is knowing your values. So probably a lot of people don't know what their values are. They don't necessarily. They might intangibly know, but I think an important thing, and again, product placement, I put in my book, there's some exercises there to actually go through and write down what your values are. So, what do they represent in your life? Because your core is your values, and you probably bestowed them by your parents. You probably just don't know, and you're just living by them. So I think it's really good to take stock and write down your values and understand what they are and how because they guide your life. Oh, there we go. Frivolous fun, ambitious activity, lifelong learning, real relationships, and clever conversations. There you go. There you go. So, and that's a key point. I think people find out their values too late in life. Same as myself. I, started to learn my values maybe 10 years after I probably should have had them very clearly up front. Also knowing your value proposition. So what are you good at? People sort of go into a role because, it's a good position. Why is it a good position? It might be great for someone else, but it might not be great for yourself. And I see a lot of people, even myself, I went into a role going, this role is going to be great. And I got into it and it wasn't what I wanted, because maybe it was too hands off. Yeah. And it was sort of sitting there looking at things happen, and I thought, this is not who I am. So I think your value proposition and your values as a person is key. Yeah. And goals. I'm huge on goal setting, SMART, MET-TC, all these sort of goal setting programs, but knowing what you want is something most people don't write down. So what do you want in 12 months? What do you want in 5 years? What do you want in 10 years? What do you want when you retire? Maybe that's too far, but your vision, it may be blurry, but you got to understand where you want to be, because that guides your life. And I have actually talked to quite a few people about this, and I've mentored quite a few people through the ranks in multiple businesses. And I've got more, but the 3, I guess, this is what I try to focus on. Sure. Is where do you want to be in 20 years? Because some people go, I want this. And I go, is what you're doing now fueling that? Maybe financially, yeah, great. And then you can do something outside. So different avenues. But sometimes someone's in a role, they go, yeah, but in 5 years I'll be happy. Why don't you try to be happy now and find what's going to make you happy now? So that's probably a key one, the 3 key points I'd say.
It's interesting, because I think it's an awful thing to say, I guess, but I think greed does guide us sometimes, because we see a role and it's this amount of money and it's more money than what this role was, and we get attracted by the dollar, and we try and look at this role as best as we can to move forward and think it's a step up, and it may be, and the money, but I think you've got to look at it, you're right, and how does this help me progress to those goals or those things that I want to aim for in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It is kind of writing a eulogy and working backwards, isn't it, a little bit?
Definitely. And I think to your point is looking at those roles and saying it's worth this amount of money. Is that money going to get you what you want outside of life, or outside of work maybe? You've got to sort of weigh up all these things. It's not just about the dollars, it's about what it gives you. But I think the other thing to consider is the more you get, the more you spend. And I found that as I've gone up, I've always gone, why have I got less money? Or I've got the same money as I've always had, because you can buy different things. You can say, I need a new car because that car is the one that's needed.
But that car's a $10,000 more expensive car than what you would have bought last time, right? Or a $15,000 car. It's a bit like through COVID. People's bank accounts rose because they couldn't spend anything. They couldn't go anywhere. It's like, how come I've got this cash? Yeah. It's like, this is good. Yeah. So, COVID did have still has a benefit, I guess, in some some respect. Although Amazon got to work out in our house.
Oh yeah. Everybody liked that one really well.
Amazon got a massive workout. What are you hoping to share with the world with these 4 books?
That's a really good question. Look, I think I want people to learn, and I guess being selfish, I'd love people to come to me and say, hey, like, that's actually helped me become a better person. Or, I've referenced you and I've taken a bit of what you've explained and I've put it with someone else and someone else and someone else, but it's come together to make me a better person.
Yeah.
I don't think someone's going to read my book specifically and become a cult follower. I'm not as good as Tony Robbins, I would say, but, and that's not my core focus in life. It's a large focus in my life, but, I have multiple strands in my life. So I guess from my perspective, I just want people, if they read it and hear me and talk to me, to get something out of that interaction. Because, a big thing I say, leadership is it's serving over being serviced. So, I think sometimes people think if I'm a leader, I sort of sit there and people carry me around, and, you see those nice pictures where it shows you a leader is at the front of the pack pulling everyone with them. And that's the way I like to see myself. I take ownership of a lot of things. I do a lot of things, and generally I try to be at the forefront of what I do and be the best that I can. And I don't step on people to get higher. And that's the principle I teach my daughter, and I'm sure my next children, who knows how many, but my big focus is compete, but never compete to the point where you pull someone else down. Yeah. Compete to be the best version of yourself, but never pull anyone else down. And that's the big part I want to teach people in life is, if you want a better position and you want to go higher, that's great, but make sure you bring people along for the journey with you. Yeah. Because if you start to push people down, it's a negative sort of leadership style.
Yeah, I remember my first boss, he used to say, Bulmer, drag your greasy guts down here. And it was an interesting leadership style.
Yeah.
But I've remembered it ever since, and it's 40 years down the track.
Yeah.
But you know what? There was a part of that was, I was not second guessing anything. I knew I'd done something wrong, and I knew where I was at, and he'd just tell me what it was at and where it was at or what was wrong, and you'd move on and you'd learn from it. And so whilst people wouldn't say that's the greatest method, geez, it worked, because I think it was authentic. It was him.
Yep.
He didn't essentially BS. He didn't, beat around the bush. And you knew exactly what it was. Okay, it might have been more command style. But yeah, I don't think it had a negative effect on me at all. Yeah, I don't think it did. Maybe I took that into my roles.
I think that that's a really cool point too, because leadership has to be flexible, because everyone's different.
Yeah,
we live in different worlds. We have different languages. We have different interpretations. What I think
different belief systems.
Well, exactly, different metric and the old the metric and the. Trying to remember the old system. We've got the metric system and the American
imperial system.
The imperial system.
Yeah.
Sorry, showing my age.
Yeah.
But we have different interpretations across the board. So someone like that who is a straight shooter might not work for some other people, because they might go, "Hey, this is too much." So that every single leader and every single book has a different interpretation. That's why there's millions of books on communication, leadership, same as raising a child. I thought there must be one central book for how to raise a child.
Oh, no.
There's millions.
That's not, don't go there. And if you don't read a book, there'll be plenty of people to tell you how to raise a child, so don't worry about that.
Exactly, it doesn't matter. You've got experts everywhere.
Exactly right. So, mate, thank you for your time. Well done on writing this book.
Thank you very much.
And writing the others, and also giving up your time to come down and have a chat. It's the first one we've been able to do face-to-face for a while because of COVID, so it's nice that you're in the Shire. Yep. I hope it goes well for you, and I hope that people do get what you want out of it, which is get some learnings, or it's changed the way they think about something. Where is it available? Where are we saying this is available, the book?
Physically, I've got many copies sitting in my basement available to go, but there is copies on Amazon, Booktopia, Fish Pond, all the main outlets.
All those, and so it's available as a. Is it available as audio? Or just
no, it is. It's it's not audio. It's Kindle or ebook, as well as a physical copy.
Yep.
Probably audiobook. It's been something I've wanted to do. I just haven't had the opportunity to put it in yet.
Yeah, that's a long. I've got another client who's done that. It's a long process.
Is it?
Oh yeah, it's a very long process. Mate, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it, and I hope that our audience today's got a little bit extra about what it takes to be a leader. But I think what you've added is that. that other dimension about command. I think that's a really intriguing space because I think we might be leaders, but we're actually operating out of a command mentality. And I think if we don't get that right, I think you're going to lose staff, and staff will go elsewhere. So, well done. Thanks
really
very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for your time.